This week it was revealed that Nvidia has been working on a new app, an application that is essentially going to replace its control panel, about time too, and introduce a whole host of rather intriguing features, one of which we've already covered on the channel via a mod, RTX HDR. Initially designed just for video playback, modders found that it could be used for games as well to very impressive effect if you saw the video. And now it turns out that that is just one of the features that is included in this new Nvidia app. Alex, you've been hands-on, as it were. You have integrated the app into your system. What do you think of it? What does it do beyond HDR?
Okay, so it is replacing GeForce Experience, and eventually it does currently replace GeForce Experience if you install it, and it will eventually replace the MVCP. It sounds like so the
Yes.
control panel will go away.
Yes.
You say yes, but John, don't.
Is it? Oh,
I
oh no.
Yes.
no, I'm just saying like you
no.
have to be trepidatious about these things
true.
because MVCP came around in the Windows XP era. And back then, it was much faster than it is now, due to just the fact that it was a much smaller driver. It was like I don't know, like 25 megabytes or something originally. It wasn't big. Now it's almost a gig, and so it's so slow. It's using the same interface, same coding style.
So bad.
It's slow, but the thing is, it is chock full of ridiculous amount of features that are actually better than the features you see on AMD and Intel.
Okay.
And so the worrying part of them moving to the NV app, in my humble opinion, is that they're going to leave behind features that are still useful for legacy things that we want to use, that are just like, if you go to any niche community online, I'm like always a little bit worried about that. But so right now, the current NV app is replacing GeForce Experience and will eventually replace MVCP. The way it works right now is you load it up. It's ridiculously fast. That's the first thing you'll notice in difference. Right-clicking MVCP with Windows 10 right-click and getting into it is a laborious process. This one just loads up within like a second. It's super fast. It has a very fast interface that seems to be immediately responsive. And part of that you'll notice is when you go in a game, like with GeForce Experience, you can load this up. You hit Alt-Z, or there's probably another way to open it up that I can't think of right now. It doesn't require a login like GeForce Experience does, so you get access to it without logging in. When you get in a game, you have the ability to change the global and/or app-specific profile in-game, and that applies to certain things like the new features that Rich just talked about. RTX HDR can be turned on and off and adjusted. You can adjust like the, I don't know, like whether or not you apply vibrance to it, saturation boosting, that is dynamic. It also, you can apply the max peak nit level, the mid-gray nit level. You can change the contrast. It's applied as one of the old GeForce Experience reshade style filters, and you can turn it on and off at will. It's very interesting. I think it works very, very well. With the new settings that they added in for RTX HDR, I was able to dial it in more appropriate to my set. For example, an LGC one I think is like max peak real nits 800 around or so, and the default of the app was actually 1000. So you can dial that in more specifically. That will change it from being less white blinding, for example, in Lost Planet, and things like that. So it'll preserve more. That was an interesting aspect of it. So I also sent Oliver some footage of NVCP running right next to the new NV app. And one thing I want to show about it too is that you'll see right now the global settings parameters of both of them open right next to each other. And you'll see there's quite a few more in the NVCP, the old NVCP. The reason for that is because it's currently still in a beta state, this NV app, and they said they are migrating over more of the features. They haven't announced which and if all they are migrating over, to be honest with you. So that's why I'm a little worried. But they did say they're going to bring over the video settings tabs, and I'm assuming that's like the resolution tabs too. So you'll be able to configure multi-monitor from this app in the future, as well as custom resolutions, which they definitely won't drop because if the competition has it, they definitely probably want it to, because you can do custom resolutions on the AMD side as well. The one other thing that I didn't talk about is you can also now bring up the Nvidia overlay in game and also do any of the performance monitoring, including latency, you know, I don't know, VRAM speed, who knows? You can look at a lot of things. One of the things that I thought was curious that was missing is you can't look at how much VRAM is being used by the game.
Right.
Perhaps that's something they'll bring over. They have a number of other things that they've announced that they want to bring in as new features, including overclocking and overclocking control for those of you who use that. And also, curiously, DLSS control. And what that means is right now, I have no idea. But things I would like to see would be the ability to change the preset that it uses. NVIDIA has like 6 presets. Some are a little bit defunct now, so maybe they reduce it to the ones that are most commonly used. You could change the presets. So that would change the model and would give you a different image resolve. Also, being able to maybe on a per game basis disable the also now defunct DLSS sharpening. So for those of you who play Red Dead Redemption 2, instead of having to do some funky DLL swapping and making the game replace the DLL every single time you load it up, it's so annoying. Maybe you could do it on the driver level. Another thing would be able to change the internal resolution of the DLSS mode, which is what you can do with modding tools. But for here, it would be in the driver and it wouldn't be picked up by things like EAC at that point. And you could give old games that did not have DLAA, which
or beyond.
would be a great thing. Or
Super
beyond. I mean, there is actually the ability with the DLSS mods to super sample with DLSS.
That's awesome.
I've never tried it out, but it's one of the things that's good there. Right now, I think it is a good thing. I didn't see any big issues about usability with it. It is not a typical Windows style overlay. It is more modern, so you have to be used to that. But it also used screen real estate in a reasonable way. It didn't start full screen, which was nice. It did start at like a good 1080p on a 4K window, and you can full screen it, but there isn't really a good reason to, I don't see yet. Just once again, I want to make sure they port over as many legacy features as is reasonable. I don't expect everything like OpenGL extension limiting there, but in the end, it seems to use the exact same like file structure in the driver. So I do think NVIDIA Profile Inspector will still work even after they deprecate.
That was what I was gonna say, because I prefer Profile Inspector personally, because I think it is faster to get into and out of, and it exposes all the same or more controls that the driver does. So like if we lose those features at the driver level, only in terms of what's presented in the interface, but they're still available on the back end, I think that would be an acceptable compromise.
I agree. I agree too. In the end, I mean, in the end, whenever I do apply SSAA to an older game, I never actually use MVCP because the profile inspector is more accurate.
Yep.
I think that's going to be the case in the end. I don't actually see them locking away that stuff because they've developed an entire community around Profile Inspector, and they don't seem to be. There isn't a really good reason to lock out.
It would behoove them to maintain that sort of relationship. I think it would just anger people if they disabled it.
There's no reason to.
No, there's zero reason to do that.
Yeah, and I also think when this goes out of beta and they replace it fully, I should probably make a video on it to talk about what it's doing differently and see like the speed advantages, as well as if they are missing things that I think are core, to give them some helpful critical feedback about that. They said they're open to critical feedback during the beta period or after, so maybe we could change things if we don't like something.
Okay, well, it is fundamentally making sure that those features that are in there are good. And, are just still there. Stuff like frame rate limiting. Is there any frame rate limiting in the current app?
Actually, I don't. I think
Oh,
that maybe one of the
man.
ones that's currently not there, but I think it's going to be there. I can't recall off the top of my head, but they did offer two new features that I thought were interesting: AV1 encode
Oh,
for
Right.
RTX 4000, as well as 120 support, 120 hertz FPS recording support for Shadowplay,
no way. Really? They added that?
or whatever it
Oh,
is.
I've
They
been
added
wanting
it
that
in.
forever. Because right now, the problem is if you're on a 120 monitor and you record Shadowplay, it still captures at 60, but it messes up the frame pacing. So you end up with this really
It does.
juddery looking video clip.
Yeah.
And also, conceivably, this would mean that I could then record at 4K 120 when necessary from the PC, right?
Yeah, without having an external capture
Without
card.
having an external capture card. So that's fantastic news.
I mean, Alex, that's 4K 120 is a bit of a big deal because, when we went into the DLSS 3 coverage, we had no way of doing 4K 120 at the time and had to
Reasonably, no.
had to sort of get together a massively compromised OBS solution that bypassed Shadowplay completely, and it was problematic on many levels.
I also, Rich, you mentioned the frame rate limiting stuff. I would love to see Nvidia implement, you can bring up the current GeForce Experience menu. I've not used this new one. I assume you can do that in the new one, but it would be great to be able to limit the frame rate like the Steam Deck does.
That would be perfect.
Like being able to just have a slider, just set
that.
your max frame rate or whatever, change the refresh rate on the fly.
Yep.
Especially if this could like overcome some games that have issues with this anyway and sort of like push beyond them. Like for instance, what if that worked on the old Crisis 24 Hertz bug or something?
Yeah, there's a lot of things. So really interesting thing is that actually this is totally tangential.
Okay, please.
Crisis 3, Rich, Crisis 3, the original release is broken on Windows 10 and above. You can fix it with in the Nvidia driver or in RTSS by applying arbitrary frame rate caps above 60. So you could put it to like 400, and for some reason it fixes the frame rate issues.
Okay, cool. Well,
It doesn't even make sense, but I don't know why that
to the
is.
benchmark suite then.
Yeah, it can return to the benchmark suite. I'm serious, but it's just this little caveat that you'll have to limit it to something like below 1,000 FPS.
That's outrageous.
Really?
It's outrageous.
Hello?
Maybe. I don't know. I don't know actually how far
I'll
it goes.
accept it.
But I thought that was funny. But I would love that. I think the ability for it to now be like the way it's done on AMD as well as Intel is almost like wholly committed to this kind of interface, more so than AMD is. I think it'll allow them some great things in the future. I think it's also, since the new RTX HDR and the RTX Vibrance thing are like AI powered filters, I think that opens the door to very interesting filters in the future that they could do, including like dumb AI upscale filters for games that are like resolution limited. You could do stylization filters, like painterly filters and things like that for games, or cell shading for games. There's a lot of things that they can do with this in the future.
Also, I would love the Steam Deck like scaling options that they build into the interface, where you can instantly just say, let's say you're outputting like 1080p and you say, do a nearest neighbor upscale, integer scale to 4K.
Right.
But like being able to do it dynamically from within that little sort of side menu. Because right now the scaling features in the NVIDIA CP, they do kind of support that, but the way it works is very fiddly and it's not really usable on my setup. So seeing that optimized and
I agree
improved
with
would
that.
be amazing.
Yeah, because like right now that's not in the NV app, any of these features. That's all still MVCP. But right now, like in the MVCP, there's no footage of this. But like when you turn on integer scaling, it's like blanks the whole desktop. It switches to GPU scaling. It's not fast. It's not per app. Which I think is
It also
issue.
So I'm using the LG OLED as a screen, and it detects that 4096 by 2160 res as the target container for integer scaling, which is not what you actually want.
F you.
And I tried using CRU to remove that res, and then it broke the NVIDIA control panel entirely, and I had to like do a driver uninstaller and like remove every instance of it, then reinstall the driver to get it back. So like it's very messy right now.
Oh my God. Yeah. So better integer scaling, better chosen scaling, taking, tips from the Steam Deck.
Seriously, just look at
here.
the Steam Deck and be like, yes, we should do these things in our driver and allow you to bring it up anytime and then make adjustments. That would be absolutely a killer feature.
So we had this question from Samsung, but we've basically not Samsung.
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 Is it little Samson?
like the biblical figure.
Yeah, the biblical figure.
Oh, yeah, okay.
Let's big him up, literally. Anyway, hey DF team, in brackets, exclamation mark. How are you guys enjoying the new Nvidia app and its newly robust overlay with new features like RTX HDR and RTX Dynamic Vibrance? I think we've covered that already. It's about time, but I wonder if you share my desire that Nvidia don't completely discontinue the old school control panel. All in all, I'm happy to see Nvidia finally have to catch up with AMD for once. That's an interesting point because the overlay that AMD has had, and it's just kind of nicer to be with.
Yeah,
it's nicer to
much
use.
more
The
pleasing.
Nvidia one has just been an embarrassment for many years now.
Yeah.
And it's just weird. It's one of these pieces of software that you could probably throw like one of those liquid nitrogen cooled 9 gigahertz i9s at it, and it would still run slowly.
Absolutely.
Yeah, hitting apply is terrifying in the
It
MVC.
is, yeah. What's going to happen?
And when it tries to like populate the list of potential games on your system, you want to do a custom profile, and it's just like, I'm just going to freeze up for a minute. you just hang out, and you can't do anything. No amount of system power can solve that problem.
I'm okay with the old control panel going as long as Profile Inspector's still there.
Same.
Yes, Profile Inspector would still have to work for me to be okay with that. If it didn't, then I'd make really big noise.
I 100% agree. The thing about that MVCP, and the reason I wanted to go, is because like one of the weird nitpicks I have with Windows 11 is that there's still a lot of weird like legacy Windows stuff in there, which sometimes has its use, but it feels very weird, almost like whiplash when you open up the thing. It's like, oh, this is like an old like Windows XP era feeling control panel, or a Vista era feeling thing that's still kind of, it still exists here in Windows. They don't really want you to find it, but you can get there if you want. And for an operating system, I do kind of get that, but it does make it feel a little bit janky in a weird way. And having that, so just having that NVCP still live there like that on top of this new thing would feel similar to me, where it's like, yeah, this is ancient and probably should go away. But like you said, only if the functions are duplicated and still allowed through the inspector.
Yeah, which is the issue I have with Windows 11, where it takes away reasonable functionality. Like the recent thing I've read is that group policy editor is not working correctly for a while now. And I actually did try and mess with it recently, and it didn't work. So yeah, there's a lot of things that I hope Nvidia doesn't take cues from Microsoft here and just not do it right. They should do it right, the transition.